Time, as they say, is relative. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. When you're a kid, a year can seem like an aeon, and a decade an eternity. I began my retro journey way back in 2006. I was at a local game shop and they just so happened to have a few Super Nintendo games. At that point, it had been over a decade since I'd even thought about the Super Nintendo. Back in those days, I just moved on to the latest console, not because I was a bloody consumerist, but because it had the latest games. The games of my rather extreme youth of Super Mario Bros. And Super Metroid had given way to Turok 2 and Rogue Squadron. Well, I kind of wanted to reconnect with what was then my relatively recent youth, and so I picked up a game. And that game was Alien, Just the One, versus Predator. And thus, a new hobby was born.
Alien, Just the One vs. Predator was developed by Japanese developer Jordan and published in North America by Activision and released in September of 1993 in the US. I never owned this game as a kid, but I rented it on several occasions and never even came close to finishing the bloody game, as it does not feature a save function or even passwords. When I got the game from GameStop, I took it home and promptly found that my SNES was missing. I found the controllers, the AC adapter, the RF switch, but no SNES or games. This prompted me to hunt down a new system, and I found one in great condition on the then up-and-coming Amazon.com for $50. After waiting what seemed like an eternity, the console came in, and at long last, I was able to pop this treasure from the past into my new console. And then I died 2 seconds before the final boss, and I never played it again. Until 3 years later when I reviewed it for my then new YouTube channel. And in that video, I said that it was boring and slow as hell. Now, in 2025, I am older and wiser, and the game still sucks. Yeah, that was kind of an underwhelming beginning of my retro journey. But hey, without this game, I would have never reconnected to my early childhood, and I might never have rediscovered classic Doom, Rise of the Triad, Donkey Kong Country, or any of the other classic games on other systems. So really, this channel owes a debt of gratitude to this slow and monotonous game. Okay, there is some good to the game. The presentation is top bloody tier. Backgrounds are amazing, and in the hive levels you see some poor bastards stuck to the walls, and there is a boss battle where a bunch of hapless humans get bursted and you gotta fight the bursters. Pretty hardcore for a 1993 Nintendo game. You play as a predator, and that is worth 100 awesome points on its own. You get a good number of attacks, a punch that is kind of a combo, a throw, a ground slide that shows that the Preddy either has a cup on or just balls of steel. You can shoot your shoulder cannon, and it helps, I guess. You can even tell your predator ship to bring down the pain, although it will hurt you too. Sprinkled around the game are a few pickups, such as some spears, and some smart discs and a standard video game meat health power-up. You fight a good number of xenomorph variants, and their sprites look pretty good, although they have very limited animations. The game, while tough, is still pretty fair, and unlike many games of its era, it's actually possible to get pretty far, even if you aren't a good gamer. This ain't nearly as bad as those Super Star Wars meat grinders. This does use that god-awful Lives and Continue system, and there was no way back in 06 that I was going to replay the entire game after dying 2 seconds before the final boss. We got good sound and music, with the opening theme being pretty catchy, and this game has a story, and it's not too bad, and is present throughout the game with some decent still art and a few minor animations thrown in here and there, which was pretty cool for a 93 Nintendo game, and that opening cutscene had stuck with me right up to the day I bought the game from GameStop. So what makes this game suck is that the combat is too bloody slow. A side-scrolling beat-em-up lives or dies based upon its speed, and if its speed drops before a certain point, it explodes in boredom. I think the rule is called the game that couldn't slow down. First, Pretty Boy crawls across the screen like he just spent 6 months eating nothing but the Colonel's finest. The aliens move like they got space arthritis, and they all have massive health bars, so you'll be beating on them for like 6 months. But what will really put you to sleep is that you can knock them off screen and then slowly painfully crawl back to you for more pain. Then you throw them off the screen again ad nauseum. Your shoulder cannon is even worse, as it's painfully weak and of course will knock the enemy off the screen. You gotta wait for him to come back. You shoot him again. What's really disappointing about this game is that it doesn't have to be as bad as it is. With a simple ROM hack, you could turn this thing into something really viable. First, make the Predator go more than 2 miles per year. Next, reduce those bloody health bars on the enemies to something more reasonable, and then make sure the enemies don't fly off screen. You fix those few things, and this game will be bloody golden. Despite the gameplay being bad, the game's story is pretty bloody good. Especially for 1993, you are given full context for what you are doing, and it feels like it's straight out of the comics. The game begins with an absolutely kick-ass cutscene. You get a text crawl that establishes that this game takes place at the end of the 25th century, making this game take place really late in the AVP timeline. The dumbass colonists find some xenomorphs when they blow open a cave while digging some tunnels for a new subway line. Hashtag car life forever. The colonists send out an SOS and it's picked up by a Predator ship tooling around looking for some fun. The Predators head to the planet and start wrecking shit up. The game sticks to a fairly basic formula. You start with a few areas where you slowly and painfully crawl your way across while glacially killing xenomorphs, and finally the level ends with a boss fight. The bosses are all pretty good and none are too cheap. After the boss is retired, you get a cutscene and they're all pretty well done. When you head to the forest, the game tells you that the Predators could still save some humies, but that they don't give a crap. Eventually, the Preds hijack a jockey, aka engineer ship, and fly it to the aliens' homeworld in the Orion Nebula. The final boss battle has you go toe-to-toe with a kind of shrunken alien queen, and the game ends with the unseen narrator saying that the galaxy owes the Predators a debt that can never be repaid, but that the Predators don't give a shit, and that they will be on the hunt for some new prey. Holy crap, why couldn't that game have been as fun as that bloody story? 6 months after this game's release, we would get the much better Aliens vs. Predator arcade game, and that game will be reviewed soon.
Moral of the story, make sure your beat 'em up is faster than a tortoise on downers. This game had everything going for it, but it just wasn't fast enough, and thus it's pretty bloody boring. If it's been over 30 years since you played Alien, just the one, versus the Predator, make it another 30. This game might seem like it's fun, but believe me, it's gonna get old fast, even if you did play it as a kid. And so, I am General Lotz, wishing you much better AVP Arcade and much better Aliens Arcade, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.